For those of you that have watched the Golf Channel for any extended period of time will know that if I say, let's do this, then I have him on the line. In fact, if you're watching on YouTube, there's his smiling mug. And I got to spend time with Michael Breed last week at the Masters. Michael, thanks for joining me, man. How are you?
Oh, it's a pleasure, Mark. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Quickly, the trip back from Augusta National, was it hassle-free? Did you get home safely?
You know what? It was fortunately, thanks to you and Grant Boone, I was able to make all the flights and the connections. And so not a bad trip at all. In fact, got a chance to meet some people on the flight who were coming back from Augusta as well. It's amazing. Augusta National, the Masters, it always delivers. It's incredible how that works, isn't it?
Truly does. Okay, for folks, our global tribe, please tell folks a little bit about who Michael Breed is before we go anywhere.
So I'm a guy like you that's trying to and has a passion for helping people play better golf. And so that's how I have made my, no pun intended, mark. And you know, it's honestly how you have as well. I think that's the fun part about the game, and the fun part about the game for you and I is the idea of the word hope, right? So I'm full of that. That's how I kind of live my life. That's what I've been able to kind of carve out in my life, is to teach people how to play. And I've had the good fortune of being able to do that with Golf Channel for nearly a decade, and then moved to CBS. And now I get to do that with a show called Course Record, which is a show that airs leading into the PGA Tour coverage, where obviously you are with all the other very talented CBS broadcasters. And then also too, I get to do some stuff for CBS Sports Net and CBS HQ. So if you, for some reason, maybe you're not able to catch the broadcast on CBS, you can just jump over to the website and see the stuff that we're doing over there. And then I get to do work with Sirius XM. I have a radio show in the mornings, pretty much 7 days a week, honestly. So we're busy doing that with my host, or co-host, I should say, Greg Ducharme, who's making a nice name for himself as well. So really just immersed in the game of golf and still doing a lot of teaching. I do a bunch of teaching here in my studio and put out a lot of content on in my social media channels as well, on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And that's all under Michael Breed. So pretty busy, having a good time, and like you, probably a little fatigued after what was an incredible week at Augusta.
Yeah, but exhilarated. Listen, folks, he's being coy. Michael is. He is also the National PGA Coach of the Year a couple years hence, so highly decorated and well respected. Okay, Michael, it's for that reason why I reached out to you, and I'm thankful you would join me. You were on a show to me that's really close to my heart as a teacher called Masters on the Range. Every year at the Masters, it's the first one up, and you guys camp out on the practice facility there, and you just show players hitting, and the teacher in you and Brian Kroll is on there alongside Kelly Tillman. You guys just get footage of players, and you watch them, and you go about watching what they do in the warm-up, the practice rounds and such, and it's incredible. And so you get to see the guys before they're out on the golf course. So I figured, who better? There's no one better than you to get you on here and to help golfers to do it like the pros. So give me your overarching theme before we dive into a few players, please.
Well, I would say this, and again, these are things that you know well, right? So first, there's a difference between practice and warming up.
Yeah.
So what I like is I like Masters on the Range, but the range changes, and it changes from what takes place Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to what takes place on Thursday and Friday, and then the weekend. So I think that's the first thing. When you go out there to practice, have an intention of what you're doing. These players will go out there and they're working on a certain something. Maybe they're trying to develop a certain shot shape for a given hole. Maybe they're working on a certain shot for wind conditions. And we obviously saw what that was like on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So that's one of the things that's taking place out there. The other thing is that they're trying to develop a skill. And that skill may be a certain motion that they're working on in their swing, like Jason Day working on his side bend and shoulder, trail shoulder movement through the golf ball. And that's all he's working on. And I think one of the things that happens with the average player is they go out to the practice area and they don't really practice as much as they try to feel good about their game, so they hit clubs that they're confident with, like 8-irons and maybe hybrids, and they stay away from the clubs that give them the challenge. And I think the biggest difference and the glaring difference to me is the PGA professional, the PGA Tour player, the player playing at Augusta National is running to strengthen a weakness.
Yeah.
Whereas the average player is trying to strengthen a strength and kind of avoid the weakness. The problem is that the weakness always shows up, and it shows up at critical times. And that's one of the reasons why players, as you well know, have a very difficult time bringing their practice success to the golf course because they don't practice the weakness.
Hey, I want to mine this a little bit more. And I love the way you would name the range differently given what day it is. Now, for most of our fans, they show up there if indeed they show up. And it's a warm up before the round. I want you to help the guy or the girl who gets on the warm up facility. We'll rename it now. And then they hit it crappy. They can't get the thing to go straight. And then they got the swing instructor's tip in the back of their head. Now they're mixed up between do this and I mustn't do that. And I can't hit it. And then they're just almost ruined before they get to the first tee. What advice would you share in that horrible situation?
So it is a horrible situation. And my answer to that is you have to look at improvement like you're going to school, right? So let's say you're in 3rd grade and you're working on mathematics. So you're adding and subtracting and maybe multiplying and dividing, but you're not working on trigonometry. And I think what happens to a lot of people is they almost feel like if they don't hit it like a tour pro when they're on the range, that they're going to struggle. And when they're struggling on the range, they feel like this is hopeless and they walk away from whatever it is that the coach asked them to do to enhance that skill. So if you're working on turning your body and on a given day, it's not cooperating, well, what many people do is they bail from the development of the skill. And what I like to tell people is, hey, you know what? You're still working on the mathematical skills. You just don't have it just yet. But when you go out on the range, don't worry. I mean, on the golf course, don't worry about your score. Continue to work on it, advancing the skill. Because at some point, what you want to do is, and you know this extremely well, this is something that we hear all the time. It's that you get so many thoughts in your mind that you get paralysis by analysis. No, I don't think you get paralysis by analysis. I think you get paralysis by not developing the skill. And so if you go out there and you continue to work on the skill until you feel like you've got it, then you can start to work on another skill. And all of a sudden now we're in 5th grade and 6th grade on our way to college and possibly working on those parts of the wisdom that you have to be able to perform a certain shot, right? Looking at a lie, understanding side hill lies and understanding a flyer lie and all that other stuff. That's the advancement. Is it irrational for somebody to think that as they're developing a skill that they're going to be proficient at it? No. But why does it all of a sudden change when we aren't hitting it that well? We all of a sudden want to find something that's going to work really well on the golf course, which you're not going to find anyway. So just stick with the skill enhancement, the skill development. And maybe you are going to have a bad day playing. Maybe you aren't. But you're that much closer to minimizing the bad days is kind of the mindset. You're going to have certain shots that are going to be bad. You're going to have certain days that are going to be bad. But as you continue to stay with the skill acquisition, now all of a sudden you minimize those.
So you're telling me then I mustn't recruit the advice of my golfing buddy who doesn't know anything anyway to somehow tell me what I got to do now, right?
Well, you know what I like to tell people is I don't go to my electrician for my dentistry and I don't go to my dentist for my electrical problems that I have in the house. Sure. Don't go to your dentist for your backswing or your downswing or your putting stroke. Don't do that.
And the reality is, and help the people realize this, because they all watch golf on TV and they see these guys and they hit it like superhumans. They have bad warm-ups too. I mean, yes, you've been out there with elite players.
You know, this is an overall mindset that I think a lot of people don't really quite have right. The thought process is, if I hit good shots, I'm going to have good scores. And if I hit bad shots, I'm going to have bad scores. And what I like to tell my students is, a bad shot doesn't mean a bad score. And so what you have to do is you have to understand how to play golf, right? We see that every year at Augusta National. Somebody misses a hole location on a short side, no matter how well they played the shot, they're short-sided, and they're probably going to end up with a bogey or worse. Look at what happened with Justin Thomas at the end of his third round. He's on 16 after making a double bogey at 15. Now he's on 16, that front right hole location, and he misses it in the bunker. And the next thing you know, he has short-sided himself, and then he gets that up onto the green in 3 putts.
Yeah.
It's all because he missed in the wrong spot. And so if you know how to play golf, and you know how to get the golf ball around the golf course, you can hit it poorly and still shoot a fairly good score. And so I think that what people can really learn is, yeah, you're going to have days where you swing bad, but don't get your mind around the idea that if you swing bad, you're going to play bad, you're going to score bad. That's not how it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Reverend Michael Breed. Okay, Michael, let's go through some players here. Actually, no, one thing before that. The one thing about Masters on the Range that I'd love you guys to do, but the hours would just be crazy long, is that driving range practice facility. It is the practice facility, then it's the warm-up facility, and then it's the warm-down facility. And we saw everyone from Rory to Scottie, you name them, after a day, even in the dark sometimes for the guys who played late. They will be out there just kind of warming down, or what are they doing there? And do you feel like it may be beneficial for the odd listener to the show?
Well, it's an interesting thing, right? So these players, this is what they do for a living. So we go back to the dentist. The dentist doesn't have the free time to be able to go and play and then warm down. But what I will say is this: you can absolutely learn something, and that is what these players will do. And you think about what was going on with Scottie, and what Randy Smith shared with him was your ball position was off.
Yeah.
And as a result of being aware of the ball position, now all of a sudden he got his game back together. And so what I always find interesting is that when players struggle with their golf swing, they always look to their golf swing. And what the very best do is, when they struggle with their golf swing, they look to their pre-swing, their ball position, their weight distribution, where they're aiming. Those are things that are essential. And so what I always like to do is, you don't have to necessarily go to the range and hit balls afterwards. But what you do have to do is, when you get in the car and you drive home, you got to think about, okay, where was I missing my shots? Was I missing it to the right or missing it to the left? Was I short on my distance? Did I miss my strike? Was the ball, like all those little different things. And then try to figure out, either through the wisdom of a PGA professional, or just through your own research and understanding of what would cause a ball to start to the right, right? So if I'm talking to one of my students that say, I started everything to the right today, I go, okay, so what causes a ball to start to the right? And so now we start working into, well, I could have been aimed over there, right? Okay, great. I could have had my ball position too far back, and that's affecting the path of the golf club. I could have had my weight distribution too much out on my toes. And so then you start to run through all of the pre-swing stuff. And what you find is the pre-swing stuff affects the in-swing. And that's exactly what happened with Scottie Scheffler. He got his ball position back, and all of a sudden the guy went out there and won by 4.
I want to talk to you about a few players, and let's go with the now 2-time champion Scheffler. And if people had to ask me about Scottie, I would just, in a word, I would say fundamentals. I'm guessing, knowing you and your approach to instruction, you'd go the same way. You have talked about the ball position already, but this guy he's militant about checking his grip even before he even hits a shot.
He actually has a grip, one of those, grip right clubs that it's a molded grip that he puts on a club that he hits with all the time. One of the things that I would say about Scottie is, and you and I both know this, I think he's the most consistent player in the game of golf right now. He's a marvelous driver of the ball, wonderful iron player. He's in the top 2 in both of those categories, not just through the year, not just from last year, but also week in and week out. His short game is phenomenal. And what I like to tell my students is if you want consistency in your game, you have to do things consistently. And so what he does consistently is he does the same thing over and over and over again. He puts his hands on the club with that molded grip every single time he warms up. And then he does the same thing with the golf club. He goes through the same routine every single time, not in his pre-shot routine, but in the warm-up part of it. He's going to hit the same shots. He's going to put an alignment stick down on the ground. He's going to do all those things that are essentials to being able to create that consistency. And what I see that happens with so many people is they don't do anything consistently. They don't show up to the practice area in the same amount of time to allow them to warm up properly. And that's a problem. They don't show up and think about, I got to work on my putting before I go out to play. They don't work on their short shots. They don't even hit any bunker shots. They kind of look at the short game area instead of saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to loosen up. I'm going to stretch in the car going over there and do the same stretches all the time. And then when you get there, go to the putting green, hit, putt for 5 minutes, walk over to the short game area, hit a couple of bunker shots, hit a couple of chips and pitches, find out what the firmness of the green is, and then go over and loosen up. Make sure that you hit some shots on the range that you're going to use on the course. And this is a very easy one. The par threes, most people are playing the golf course that they're familiar with all the time. Play your par threes. Ben Hogan was famous for playing the golf course before he went and played his round of golf. He would play it on the range. But maybe you don't have to do that, but you can play the par threes. So you go to, like my course that I play all the time. I know I'm going to have a 4-iron on one par 3. I know I'm going to have a 7-iron on another par 3. I know I'm going to have 6 and 8 irons. So I hit that shot and I visualize in my mind, okay, the flag is over here. I'm going to hit this shot. The flag's over here. I'm going to hit this shot. And I go through that in my warm-up, hit a couple of tee shots. You don't have to hit 57 drivers. You just have to hit drivers with purpose. Yeah. The first tee is this shot. I'm gonna hit this down the left-hand side and I'm gonna cut it. Practice that tee shot. You'll see that every player, Scottie Scheffler included, the last driver they hit on a Thursday or a Friday is that opening tee shot that they're gonna have that faces them. We saw it all week long on Masters on the Range. And that's one of the reasons why he is so good, because he does the same thing over and over and over again, and it's monotonous. And the reason why he is like a cyborg out there is because he's monotonous in how he prepares. It's the same thing every single time. And as a result of that consistently doing something, now he has consistency when he's out there playing.
If you want consistency, do things consistently. I love that. Okay. Let's go with Ludvig Åberg. Look, the guy looked like he fell out of heaven swinging a golf club. I want your take on what people can learn from him, because there's an elegant simplicity to everything that he does. But I want you to unpack what he is, please.
Well, I'll tell you this. Ludvig is a guy who has a world of talent. And what's interesting about the game at the college level is you can beat players with your ball striking.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that at the PGA Tour level. You have to beat players with the totality of your game. And so when I look at Ludvig, I feel like, we have heaped a tremendous amount of pressure on him because he's such a glorious ball striker. He really is. I mean, it's, I say that Rory McIlroy has the most hypnotic golf swing on the PGA Tour. I think Ludvig is from a ball striking standpoint, not in the same at the same level as Scottie Scheffler, but at the same time, he's very, very close. And it's quite frankly, it's more fun to watch him swing a golf club than it is to watch Scottie Scheffler. He makes it look so easy. Mm-hmm. But when you dig down, what you see with Ludvig is the short game needs a little bit of work. And he'll develop that. I mean, I know he's got the Ryder Cup on his side, but that's his first major that he's played in. He's got some real growth that he has to go through. And so when I look at Ludvig, I feel like we're looking at a guy that is a potential #1 player in the world. And I'm not talking about in the next few weeks or few months. I'm talking about, in 5, 6, 7 years. This is a guy who, when he develops the skill set that is paramount in winning a major championship, and I look at him like he finished second in this event, and he did that with a very weak short game at tour level standards. And so I think when he develops that skill, and there's no doubt in my mind that he will, I think this guy is going to be one of the best players on the PGA Tour, and likely, vie for number one in the world.
Agreed. In terms of lessons, takeaways for the viewer and the listener, I was struck as we watched him make his way through the weekend. Now he's in the mix for vying for arguably the most coveted prize in golf. Yet he was flashing a smile there after every second or third shot, where you could see the pressure etched on everyone else's faces. Talk to us a little bit about just on-course attitude, because it looks like he had that lot figured out.
You're spot on. And you think about Scottie Scheffler, and in his press conference, he's saying that, all he really wants to do is go home and see his family. And I think Ludvig is at the same spot in his mind. He has the priority straight, particularly in his first year at a major, not unlike Neil Shipley, who's an amateur, and he's playing in his first Masters. I think they're both very similar ages. Neil graduated from James Madison University and then over to Ohio State. So they're roughly at the same age. And I do think that, at this point, they're very grateful to be at the level that they are. Obviously, they deserve it, but they're also, they're wide-eyed and taking in the moments. I do think that there will be a time where the quest is no longer about having a great time as much as it's going to be about winning. And I think what you have seen with Ludvig is a skill set that very few have, and not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And I think that he'll hang on to that. There's no question in my mind that he will. But I think as he hangs on to that and then develops those skills, that's why I think he's going to be one of those guys that will develop that number one in the world thing. Contrast that to Jon Rahm, because Jon Rahm was working his way towards that sort of place where you have the freedom to be able to play golf. And he was almost on edge the entire week. And then afterwards, post-Masters, he had some choice things to say about how he was treated by some of the players out there. And I think that he's not in a great state of mind. And I think it'll be interesting to see where he is come PGA Championship in just about a month.
How important, because you've worked with golfers of all skill levels. And I think maybe you talk about the mental game, and it's sort of trite in a way because it's immeasurable. You can measure strokes gained something, but you can't measure mental and emotional acumen. How important in all of your experience is that stuff? Because I personally don't feel like it's recognized enough. Say you.
Well, it's interesting. I agree with you. I think the game of golf is really a fascinating thing. You can't play golf without a golf ball, right? You can stand up to make practice swings all day long, but you can't play golf without a golf ball. And you can't play golf without your mind. And the problem is that people kind of feel like they'll train a golf swing so they can hit the ball where they're going, but they don't work on training their mind. And it's one of the things that I have done a lot of work on. I have read a lot of books on the psychology, Bob Rotella's books. I've read all of those, Dr. Koop's books. I have gotten into it, and I've read a lot of books that are away from, I'm talking about John Wooden. He's not a golfer necessarily, but he's got incredible wisdom on how to prepare the mind. John Gordon is another guy. He's written phenomenal books, The Energy Bus, and just wonderful books, The Power of Positive Leadership, which I think we all lead ourselves. I read a lot of books on leadership and then try to turn it back into, how am I leading myself? And in particular on a golf course, how am I leading? And then the other thing I've done is I've also taken a lot of tests to understand when I get under pressure, how do I behave? What do? I become hyper aware. So I start to look at wind, and all of a sudden 5 mile an hour winds start becoming really, really important. and whole locations become really, and I almost get so aware of something that I shrink my target down to where it's almost impossible to hit it. And so that's something that I've had to work on with my game. And as I've done that, now all of a sudden it frees me up, and I start picking targets that I want to start the ball at, and I don't worry about where it finishes up. I just want to start it down the left and let it fade to the right, and the amount that it fades doesn't bother me. And that's been something I've worked at. I don't think people really understand how to control their mind in a positive way. And one of my favorite lines that I'll share with you and obviously the viewers and listeners is this, that I got from Dr. Rick Sessinghaus, who you know well, formerly worked with Colin Morikawa and works with a bunch of other really, really talented players at the collegiate level. And he said this, he said, when you're standing over a shot and you've got some nerves, we all think about what the bad shot looks like. Don't hit it right, don't hit it left, don't top it, don't do whatever. And what he always says is, finish up with, what does a good shot look like? Okay. And the good shot for me is start down the left and fade to the right. That's a good shot. And I carry that with me all the time. What does a good shot look like? And I think we don't really understand the mind as well as we could or should. And we don't practice or rehearse how to train the mind so that it does what we want it to do when we're in the biggest moments.
You mentioned Dr. Bob Rotella. He's been on the show, and he said something that to my dying day will stick with me. And he goes, it's amazing in all of his experience with all the top flight pros, and he works with Rory amongst others still. He goes, the golf ball has an uncanny ability to go where your last thought was. And I think about that, I'm like, that's so true. Now to that, you were talking about freeing up the golf swing, freeing up the mind. And we could see that Jon was almost beholden by expectation, maybe trying to prove a point to the naysayers, whoever they are. And then he's obviously defending champion. That's something. And then there's Rory McIlroy, who's coming in there with, I would say now, the burden of completing the career Grand Slam and winning the Masters. Now, this is so curious, where the guy's won 4 majors, right? And there's somehow his whole career now is going to be defined by winning just one that he hasn't. And you can almost see it as he plays the Masters, because if he showed up there today, you could give him half a set of clubs and probably he'd shoot 67 or 8 or 9. So let's talk about that, because people watching this, they've got their club championship, they've got their member guest, whatever the case might be, and there's expectation. What is my family going to think? That sort of deal. And that is handcuffing to a golf swing. So what say you?
Yeah. So I would say this. I think you see the pressure that Rory has at Augusta National even before the Masters tournament, when he starts talking about whether he's going to play the week before or not play the week before, and the certain alterations that he'll make. He will curiously make a change to a driver length or to a different putter or things like that. I thought that he was in great shape in his mind in 2023 after 2022. And then after 22 went the way or 23 went the way it went, I felt like, man, this is going to be a really difficult time. And then he shoots 66 in his final round before heading over to Augusta, and I thought he was in good shape again. He played very clean. He played 2 rounds without making a bogey. But there's a pressure that he puts on himself that he is trying to deflect. And you know what there's a great book that I read called Run to the Roar. Probably haven't heard of it. It's written by a guy that's a squash coach at a school up in Connecticut at the college level. And it's a phenomenal book, Run to the Roar. And basically what it says is that you have to run to the fear. And what I think is happening with Rory is he is running from the fear. You know what? Like, we want to win something. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to perform poorly. And so develop this game plan of what you have to do to play your best golf. And it's not found in whether you play the week before or you don't play the week before. And it's not found with a golf club that you do or don't have, cutting it down or not cutting it down or putting, it's not found there. Where it's found is embracing moments and understanding that, you know, like if Rory created a new goal, and the goal was not necessarily about shooting a 67, but rather not missing a shot mentally, So when I was younger, I played baseball, and I was a shortstop. And so you're sort of the captain on the field. And what I always shared as a result of a conversation that I had with my coach was, look, physical mistakes are going to happen, and that's okay. We don't want to make a lot of them, but we know we're going to make those, right? We're imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
But mental mistakes shouldn't happen. And so I always felt like if I was flawless in my mental game, I'd be much better physically. And so what I would say is, if I was coaching Rory and I was coaching anybody to prepare for a club championship or a member guest or a big round of golf, even a round of golf where you're playing good and it feels like you're going to break a threshold, maybe you're going to shoot your lowest score.
Right.
What I would say is this: one, never hit a shot with a mental thought of negativity.
Okay.
So what I would do is I would go out and I would play rounds of golf before these important rounds, and I would chart how many times I had a negative thought in my mind. And I've done this in tournaments. I played a tournament one time and I had 14 negative thoughts in my mind. First time I'd played tournaments in a while, I shot 81. The next round I said, okay, I'm going to cut that down. I only want to have 7 negative thoughts. And I actually got to 5 and I shot 73.
Right.
Now, do I feel like I swung the club better? Well, maybe, but did I swing the club better because my mind was in a better spot? And if I was coaching Rory, I would say, Rory, here's what I want you to do. I want you to never have a negative thought in your mind. And I always want you to have a thought in your mind of, where do you want the golf ball to go? What does a good shot look like? And let's play a little conservatively on hole number 11 with the wind blowing right to left. Because what I want you to do is, I want you to miss this shot like Hogan did to the front right portion of that green. No matter what happens with this shot, we're not going to hit it into the pond on the left. And so if you miss the green, which is not a problem, but you leave it front right, now all of a sudden you might have made poor contact and made a bad swing, but you have a check in the positive column, which is, I hit it where I wanted to hit it. I missed it to the right. And at that point, you can think your way into playing good golf. And so I would, if I was coaching him or anybody else, I would really harp on, you want to conquer these demons. You conquer it in the mind by forgetting about where you're hitting the golf ball. Don't worry about what your swing looks like. Worry about, I'm not going to fail mentally. I'm not going to have negative thoughts, and I'm not going to miss shots in the wrong spots. And at that point, you start playing golf again.
That is brilliant. Okay, and I've kept you for long. So I want to ask you one more, and it's kind of a hybrid, an amalgamation of 2 observations you've made pertaining to Ludvig and both Rory. That ball he hit in the water on the left of 11. That to me almost was emblematic of the week, and it really scuttled his chances to make a weekend run. Wind was strong out the right. Flag was kind of back right-ish. And so often when a goodish golfer is in that situation, like the wind's off the left, so then you swing to the left. And he looked like he pushes the path off to the right-hand side. Obviously, as he does that, the face shuts and he puts hook spin on a right to left wind shot. It was destined for the water. Ludvig, when he was in high school, his coach tells me for the first year, all they do is study the ball flight laws and how they pertain to self. Understanding, okay, what am I going to do to move the path here, move the path there, and arrange the face to it? Where Rory on that shot, if to just hit it front right, if he just kept the face a touch more open with the wind out of the right, it's a different tournament. So talk to the folks about that mechanism, because I feel like wind's out of the left, we aim left, we swing left, next thing it slices. You know the drill. Help us, please, man.
Yeah. So what I like to do now, you're at a slightly, I'm going to say this is sort of a single digit handicap individual at this point, right? What I like to tell my students is you have to swing to the fear. Okay. So if the fear is left, you got to swing left. If the fear is right, you've got to swing right. So swing to the fear. To your point, Rory doesn't want to miss left, so he swings to the right, and all of a sudden he creates that draw spin, and now on the wind, this thing is going sideways. Colin Morikawa did the exact same thing on Sunday. Mm-hmm. He missed to the left as well. So the rule of thumb is swing to the fear. And the second thing is this, and I call the face the money maker, okay? You always have to have the money maker in your mind. It's the most important part of the game. So what is the face going to do like? Well, if we're in a bunker, we would never shut the face. We always open the face, right? You may play the face a little squarer if you've got a plugged lie, whatever, but you're always thinking about the face when you're in the bunker. What am I doing with the face? The bunker is beautiful in teaching you the importance of the face. It's the same in putting. Face is most important. We think about path.
Yeah.
And what I want people to do is understand that when you take the moneymaker and you control the moneymaker and then swing to the fear, now all of a sudden you can play good golf. So if I don't want, and that's how I play golf. I swing left and I face right. And that's how I hit my little fade. And I like to play fades. That's what I like to do. And so what I would say is that there will always be fears. When I work with better players, I ask them what's the shot they hate to see. They say, most really good talented players don't like to hit it to the left or the pull side. And I go, okay, then we have to get used to swinging to the pull side. And then what I'll do with those players is I'll bring them to a practice tee, and I want them to get on the far, for a right-handed golfer, I want them to get on the far left side of the range.
Yeah.
And then I want them to start that ball down the left-hand side, and I want them to swing into the woods and not let it go into the woods. Now, it takes a little while to do that, but once you get comfortable swinging left and facing right, now all of a sudden you can play. You can do the same thing as well if you want to play draw. You have to be able to swing right, and you have to be able to face left. And so what I do believe is that when you understand how to control a club face and how to swing a path, you then start understanding ball flight laws. And I think the one thing that most people don't understand, because it's very difficult to see the face when the face is traveling 120 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's easier to see the path when it's traveling 120 miles an hour. And so what I do believe is that if you do drills to understand face and experiment, if I open the face here, what's going to happen? If I close the face, what's going to happen? If I open the face and I swing over here, if I close the face and I swing over here, and experiment a little bit and start to understand how the golf ball moves, what causes the ball to move, what's the deflection like off of the face in the start line, and how's that create spin. Now all of a sudden you have a chance to be able to rely upon motion and understanding when you get in that pressure, and your mind is now locked into success.
Brilliant. And he shared a pressure drill with you guys too, to say, hey, go to the wrong side of the range, the uncomfortable side, and practice like that. Hey, Michael, this was great. Thank you. I appreciate your time to fit us in. You've shared where you are. Just for the folks listening or watching, please share the website so they can find you.
So I am at michaelbreed.com. You can go to Michael Breed on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course my YouTube channel. Sirius XM. And this is really the fun part for me. 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning, I get to do exactly what you're doing here. I get to talk golf. I get to bring on very wise coaches, insightful individuals that understand the mind. We get to talk to touring professionals, as you get the chance to do on a weekly basis. And it's an opportunity for all to satisfy that need that we have. We're all golf junkies. We love it. We love knowing more about it. We love understanding the nuances to it, how to play the game better, architectural skills, all these different things. And I think that that's the most fun part for me, is being able to give back to the individuals that, like you do, Mark, where we're feeding the thirsty. We're bringing water to the thirsty. And it's such a gift that we get to give, isn't it?
Yeah, you've done some great shows. One of the best was, I was in a car and I was listening to you going over Alistair McKenzie's theories on golf course design. And this for me was the perfect prep for Augusta National. So thank you. Thanks for joining us. I don't know how you're going to do it, but go get some rest, please. You deserve it.
Thank you, my friend. And thanks for everything. I enjoy the show. Obviously, I love listening to the wisdom that you provide us on CBS and also with the podcast, but I appreciate the friendship too. And I know you know that. So thank you for that as well.